Hello, everyone, and welcome. I hope you had a good day. I'm here with my amazing guest, Mark Andrews. Mark, hello. How are you?
I'm good, Irina. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Today, we are talking about an exciting topic, AI in education and AI in the workforce. Mark, could you please introduce yourself? Tell the viewers a bit more about who you are and
Absolutely.
what do you do?
Yeah, so my name is Mark Andrews, and I am based in the United States out of New Jersey. And I am a father, a husband, a tech enthusiast. I'm a bit of a small time farmer, and I'm very excited about AI. So I've started my own company called AI Profits, and my company is focused on AI consulting and AI advising and training. But before that, I had amassed a very large career as a banker for 4 years right out of college, working in finance. And then I actually moved to marketing for about 10 years, where I worked in digital marketing. So I worked very hands on with marketing technology and advertising technology. And I just had these epiphanies through the year that it was all AI, right? Everything was an algorithm, or everything was built on some type of model. So back in 2020, I started to transition into technology. And I went back to school and got a degree in data science and started to realize, like, wow, this is really interesting, this world of data. And then since then, I was working at a corporate role at a company called Haleon, working on technical product ownership. So kind of helping enable the business and the stakeholders with AI and technology under the hood. I just had this epiphany, like, I think that now is a good opportunity to kind of spread my wings and do my own thing. I had always been a little bit intimidated by starting a business, but AI has helped make that easier. So about 4 months ago, I launched my business, and it's been a journey so far. It's been a lot of fun.
Is a great story that you shared, had that you called it epiphany, and you also noticed AI around you when you were working. What kind of problems do you want to solve with AI profits?
It's a really good question. And I think that there's a lot of people trying to solve a lot of different things with AI. And what I started to recognize is that when I was working with humans, a lot of people are fearful of AI. They're not quite ready for it. It's sometimes difficult for someone to get enthusiastic about something that might rule what they do obsolete. So I started to
Mm.
have this epiphany moment where, wow, AI is a drastic, scary topic for a lot of people, but it's become so normalized and so casually spoken about that I think there's an opportunity to help people simplify it and play checkers with AI instead of chess. So my whole focus was to really just focus on how can I simplify AI in its most primitive format, but focusing on helping people use it as a tool. And that was really like the core of my business, was not to make agents or automation or create this, next wave of what the world should look like in 2030, but was to help people with skills and techniques today.
So it's more helping and guiding people how to use it without fear.
Yeah, yeah, and it's an interesting thing because I kind of refer to it as like PowerPoint or like Excel. Like, it took years and years to learn how to use PowerPoint or Excel, but people have just been given AI and it's almost as
Mm.
complex as those things. So I realized that there's kind of that skill gap.
Yeah, so we have the tool and then, go and use it, figure it out yourself how to use that. Yeah, that sounds familiar. What is the single most significant shift you see AI creating in the workplace?
I see a shift in changing the status quo and breaking some industry best practices. When we went to school for different areas of profession, you started to realize that a lot of it is focused on operations or process. And really within that, it's just data that goes from one point to another. So I started to realize that people can be very, very good at what they do, regardless of what their remit is and what their professional background is. But AI was more so an enabler that can help them do things better. And then that called for a revisiting of processes and operations, a revisiting from the status quo. And I think it's more of an approach that's agnostic of data because you might be helping people better activate and learn about data and how it can be used in their professional life. But that's where AI is kind of like this area that reduces the friction. It helps
Hmm.
normalize some of these things and it helps people understand that They don't need to be an expert in data to do better at what they're doing. They just need some new tools and some new perspectives.
I'm an educator, and I know that I am feeling overwhelmed sometimes with AI, and I'm sure that many of my fellow educators feel the same. There is a bit of how to do it. There are so many things that are available online. How do you understand which news to read, which to skip? What do you do? So, do you have any advice or suggestions? What kind of first step educators can take to reduce that cognitive load and fear, perhaps?
That's a really good question. I think one of the main things is, and this is one of the things I really focus on when I work with people, is understanding the limits of AI, understanding what it does wrong, what it can't do well, and what it won't do great. And I know a lot of educators, and this is something that I've seen a lot, is the fabrication of resources or claims or data. That to me is a tremendous deficit between the gap of adoption because that'll immediately turn someone off. But once you kind of learn about how these things work and you can kind of use a prompt and double and triple check your work, you start to realize that there's still a lot of gaps. You still need to go to references, you still need to kind of comb through them to make sure that they're legitimate, at least for my personal sanity. And I think that that's like one of the first lessons is let's focus on what it can't do. I think the other thing, Irina, that I've really learned is my focus on AI is void of reasoning. So I don't want people to think that AI is going to think for them. I want them to look at it as it's a tool that will help supplement and make them more efficient or effective. I think when you have AI reasoning, you're removing that human layer. And I don't see that as a necessarily good thing for the usage of technology or the growing of skills. So I think it's important to always have like that human layer on top. And I think it's important to see how the AI operates and kind of see how that progression works. So something like that new GPT study mode, I think is amazing. I think it kind of shows you and walks you through the logic of what it's doing and kind of gives you this kind of approach to tone it up or tone it down. But it's an interesting view as to how educators can use certain models or certain approaches to use AI for good. Because as you know, once once you pass along the skills of AI, it can catch like wildfire. So it's like really important to train people on that idea of like, okay, here's what it can and can't do. But just to know, like it's like the internet when it came out. Not everything's real. We shouldn't believe everything we read.
That discussion about what AI can and cannot do leads me to my next question about skills and students. So, what do you think is the most critical skill with regards to AI that our students need to develop?
That's a good question. I think one of the main things I've seen, and this is kind of like from my perspective, like working with professionals, is there's a gap of hard data skills. And when I say hard data skills, I'm also talking about soft data skills. So understanding front to end when data begins and when data ends. I think that there's professionals who've built their careers on getting really good with strategy, understanding operations, building relationships, and working in different capacity. If you look at like an analyst who's analyzing data, they might be making a report that's weekly or monthly and then cascading those insights to their stakeholders. So I think what AI has done is it's shifted these older industries and these older approaches, and it's made them more data agnostic because AI can so carefully detect these anomalies, see these patterns, help guide you with which data goes to where. And I think that students who learn the data and learn the innards, kind of like what's happening under the hood, are going to be powerful once they come out of college because they're going to be entering these mature areas that have these old processes that, in some cases, in a lot of cases, are actually medieval and really need to be optimized. And I actually see some of the younger workforce, the Gen Zers, coming in with this fresh perspective that's data agnostic. And it's really a change from the status quo that I think is accepting, and I think people are open to it. So, for instance, you might have someone come out of college with a fresh perspective on a process, and this process could be 10 years old. Now, in a data perspective, data is binary, so it'll be one or a zero. but the business leader might have some reservations about X or Y because there's always this personality that comes into the personal world. So, what I like to say is there's a famous quote from this guy, Michael Lewis, who wrote this book, Moneyball. When you remove belief and bias and all you have data, that's when you'll have the truth. And I think that the students that are coming up, when they focus on the data and can learn about analytics and learn about how data moves from point to point, it can best behoove them. And I also think it's an area where you want to try every new tool you find. Be curious, get out there, get your hands dirty, because a lot of older people in the workforce haven't done that. They don't have those hard skills, they don't have that curiosity. So I think it's an area look at it as a sandbox and use as many free tools as you can and learn what they can and cannot do and see how they can make your life easier or make your job better.
Do you have any example of how someone who didn't study data science could learn those skills? Or maybe you could talk a bit more about specific examples that business students can understand.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, one of the good examples I like to use is with supply chain and logistics. So, if you think about manufacturing a product, that's going to generally happen from either raw resources or materials, and it's going to happen in a plant. When you follow that product from the plant, it might go to a distribution warehouse, and then it might go to some other country, and then it might land in some store. It could land in like a CVS or even a McDonald's down the road from you. So I think it's interesting when you track the data and you see these relationships, like there's entity A moving to entity B. And really what it's just like is like stock trading, right? It's just moving a ship from one port to the next, and you're following each and you're seeing the data. How long does it take? And I think when you start to do this, you see these bottlenecks, you see these areas of improvements. So you start to see like, oh, wow, that's a pressure point, right? You talk to the stakeholders and you'll start to understand these little areas that are the deficits. And that's where I focus on AI optimization. Because if you can reduce the bottleneck, you can then enable all of those other areas that are beyond and above that bottleneck. So I'll give you a great example. One of the clients I was working with about 5 months ago, they had a large team, about 60 or 70 people, and they were doing project management. And what they were essentially doing was going to a database and extracting this project report, going through that report every Monday for, a handful of hours, let's say 6 to 8 hours. And they're massaging that report to then build out report B that would go into another system. So they are in this middleman position, manually going through the data. And we used AI to consolidate this process by about 4 to 5 hours. So thus, you're truncating a 6 to 8 hour process and making it 2 or 3. And now you have this opportunity cost. You've just saved yourself 5 or 6 hours a week. So when you go to a 40-hour work week to 35, then what do you do with that time? You could reinvest it into analytics. You could reinvest it into storytelling, like learning more about the business, training. And it's this opportunity cost that AI is giving people. It's like, if you can really harness it, now you're going to be able to go above and beyond professionally. So I actually have seen some people who are going back to school now and like getting degrees because they're able to perform at the same level as they were, but now at a lower cost of time. And I think that that's one of the powerful points of AI is it's a gift for those who are behooved to use it.
I believe your example is absolutely exciting and it's visionary. You could imagine how things are done. But still, many people, even if they are excited about something and they see clearly that there is a lot of potential, it's very difficult for them to move from fear to opportunity because many people are afraid that, oh, what if I will not succeed? Do you have any suggestions to how we can help them to shift that mindset, especially within the context of organization?
Absolutely. One of the things I've seen about AI is it's kind of a cultural tool that kind of breeds on the nucleus that it's bound to. So there's been research that says if leadership is pessimistic about AI, half of the people are going to be excited about using it. And that is actually a contributing factor to that fear. The fear of having your wrist slapped or the fear of not having an organizational buy-in into you using a tool. I think the other side of it is a lot of the social media we see is spreading fear and it's misinformation. AI is going to take over your job. AI is coming for your job. I've only seen several industries that have been minimally impacted to this point, and I do think there will be jobs that are removed by AI, but I think more will be created. So when I think about the fear, I think it's the fear of the unknown. And, there's a social saying where like if people might be fearful of others that they're ignorant of because they don't understand their cultures, they don't understand their backgrounds. And I almost look at AI as similarly. If you don't understand it and don't know how it works, it's going to be scary. But if you can start to use it, you can start to quell that fear. And it's almost like swimming. Like you're always going to be scared of swimming until you jump in the water and start to try to swim. And then you put your feet down and you can stand and you realize it's not that scary. I think the other interesting thing is the democratic aspect of AI helps people quell that fear. So if you have a team of 15 people and two of them are using AI and they're saying, hey, we're saving time, this is how we can use it. Those are kind of like these AI champions that are able to positively, laterally impact their team. And that is actually something that helps reduce fear. Like when you see, I'll give you a good analogy. If you were a lumberjack and you're in the woods swinging down trees with an axe, and you look over and you see your friend with a chainsaw and he's chopping down trees 2 or 3 times as fast, you're going to be like, whoa, how do you use that thing? Can you teach me? And that's like a moment that reduces fear. So I think that the social aspects of AI and sharing these use cases, sharing the successes, but then also looking at it as not the end all be all, just kind of as a tool can help reduce that. When people focus on AI literacy and heavily into the reasoning aspects, I think that increases fear because you're telling people that AI is going to think for them. And then they're going to think that might be replacing their capacity to think, which is it's kind of like a gray area, right? It's kind of weird, but I've seen it's interesting.
Do you have an example of a job that was enhanced where a human skill was enhanced by AI, not made obsolete?
Yes. So I worked with a couple of teams who have these services in which they provide different types of people. And in one of these cases, it would be a recruiting service. So you'll have people that are recruiting for certain roles. And in a way, we've been able to help some of these companies that I've worked with specifically about 20% gains in their capacity to reach more people with more meaningful messages that are more personalized with the usage of AI. So if you were producing, say, a baseline of 100 people that you could reach out to a day, and that people had a 5% conversion rate of having a meeting with you, AI could increase that to 120 and the conversion rate to 7 or 8%. And they might be minuscule gains, but over time, that savings and that compounding effect is where it really comes into play. In other cases, one of the clients I've worked with had thousands of AI licenses. Large client, 3,000-4,000 licenses of Copilot, and people are trying to use it day to day. So one of the things I found, Irina, and this is one of the measurement tactics I use for AI is, let's say you have a team using AI, you're going to be able to pull kind of like a video game, like, okay, what are you guys using it for? Where are you prompting? Are you prompting it here? What are you doing it? How are you asking it? And like, which areas are you using it for? But then when you actually layer on a qualitative survey, you could say, hey, how much time have you saved doing this? And you could start to indicate by the professionals themselves if it's actually adding value. So it's almost like that's how you can quantify that, is by teaching people how to use AI, but then understanding how is it actually saving time or making the business more effective or more efficient. And that's where it comes down to the impact. So there's a lot of different use cases. I almost like can't even pick one because I always say like it's AI is like a pool. It's like anyone can jump in, but they're all wearing different bathing suits and they all have different ways of swimming.
My next question to you is, okay, let's say I'm a business owner. What should I do? What kind of mistakes I should avoid in order to integrate AI more successfully in my organization?
That's one of the best questions with AI right now. And I think the biggest thing that people make the mistake of is looking at AI as an end goal or a solution. It's almost as if it's like this pervasive gray area where you're looking at an oasis that doesn't exist. And I think that when people just try to strap AI on everything or attach AI to anything, it can fail. So I think the important part is to focus on like a tangible and reasonable goal, and then try to understand if AI can help you reach that goal. So, for instance, I was working with a team of financial advisors who have assets under management of X, and say there are 20 of them. Their goal is to increase the amount of assets that they manage. Now, AI can supplement that, but that can happen in many different ways. AI can help them find new clients. AI can help them get referrals from their existing clients. It can help them do marketing or sales. But at the same time, AI could also help analyze those investment portfolios, kind of compare it to those personas of those investors, and help identify new areas of purchasing power, new opportunities to invest. So I think when you find a particular goal and you go backwards, that's my approach. It's like, okay, if we want to increase sales by X, how do we do that? And you kind of take a step back and look at what are the inputs that lead to sales? Are there certain types of products that have a higher revenue that we should be looking at AI? And can AI help us there? And then throughout that process of actually getting a sale into the point prior of signing the forms and having that buy-in, and to the point of just introducing yourself to someone new, all the way to the very beginning of, hey, there's a new person I should reach out to. It's almost like AI can help in every stage, but every different company and organization is going to be better at one stage than another. So it's up to each team to identify like where their business problem is, right? Because otherwise you're just slapping AI on everything. So I think Albert Einstein once said something along the lines of like, if I had an hour to save the world from a disaster, I'd spend the first 59 minutes identifying like the problem statement. And I really think that that traditional approach is really great with AI because it's focused on the business and the operations, and AI is a tool.
We do not have an equal access to different AI tools. Some of them are free, some of them we have to pay for. And there is also a different level of quality for the outputs you're getting and how long you can continue getting the more complex tasks done. For example, I once tried to create a game in Claude, quiz, and I did succeed, but it took quite considerable amount of time. There is possibly a divide between those people who can pay and those who may not be able to afford to pay for those extra bits. How do you suggest we manage that?
That's a big separation point that I think is going to become a bigger issue with AI. And I think it's that gap is only going to widen as costs increase and that the computational needs also start to go up. I think the biggest thing for those folks is to really focus on learning about prompting and approaching AI so you can get the most out of your daily tokens. Almost look at AI as a video game. You're going to have like 3 lives every day. And once you're out of those lives, you need to wait till the next day until they're there. So the better you get at prompting and the better you understand how AI can add value, the easier it is. So when you think about using it for work, it's different because like the companies will pay for it. It's looked at differently. But for personal use, I really need to ensure that like, all right, my prompts have to be really good. I can't afford to do anything silly. I know which model I want to use for certain tasks. So I kind of have like the areas I want to lean there. And yeah, you approach it very, very strategically.
Do you have any specific advice for students starting their career now? Anything that could really help them? And possibly if you have advice on what types of AI they may want to at least start with if they don't know what to do, anything that you could say about it?
Absolutely. My number one model to start with is actually ChatGPT o3. O3 is more objective, and it does talk to you about its logic of when it approaches certain things. I think it's important when you're first starting out with AI to focus on the objectivity and the power of it. And I think that the sycophancy that you see is something that deteriorates a little bit of that in the beginning as well. So I think when you approach AI, it's important to learn and to use a model that kind of helps show like under the hood, like, okay, the user is looking to do X and Y. So maybe I should go do Z and B. And I think that that's a good first step with starting. I also think the other thing too is to try to use it to complete like a particular task and start to actually do a deep dive into the impact and the accuracy of that. That's where students are going to start to learn the limits because a lot of them are going to have this first approach where they use AI, they might write a paper. I did it a few years ago, and then all of the sources are fabricated and it's 100% false. And that's an important learning moment. Like as bad as it is, that is an epiphany that people have similar to the internet. That's like, wow, this is a scary place. But like, wow, AI is going to fabricate something that's not always going to be truthful. So I think that that's a good first step. It's definitely, yeah, start with O3. And then once you get to a 4.0 and 5.0, it becomes more of like a yes man, like assistant, someone who's always going to cheer you on. And that's really good. But at the same time, you want to be objective because education is objective. Facts are facts. And that's really how you should approach it.
And what about some career advice? Say, I am a student or I am a recent graduate. I'm a business graduate, so majority of my students are business students. What should I start with? Where do I begin?
That's a really good question. I think look at where you want to work professionally and understand what that day to day looks like. If you were to go into any profession and you want to break down that 40-hour work week across the management levels, there's different kind of parameters of remit. But focus on the managerial aspects and the day to day on the surface, that boots on the ground approach. And when you can understand how AI can augment those processes, you can really start to see how you can just come right into the workforce with like immediate knowledge, like, oh, hey, this is what this company does. This is the process. Here's 5 use cases to where AI might be able to help that. Now, if you can job shadow one or actually interview someone and learn that day to day, you can start to write down how much time and how much time is devoted to certain tasks. So in a 40-hour work week, they might say, oh, I spend going through data 10 hours a week. I'm in meetings 10 hours a week. I'm emailing people for 10 hours a week and reading emails. I have to do this a report for my boss every Friday, and it's a huge pain in the butt. So you focus on those tasks and you understand how AI can kind of supplement and augment each of them. The next biggest piece of advice I have for students, and this is a big one, is organizations are sitting on gold mines of historic proprietary data. I've worked with companies who have terabytes and terabytes of data that's incredibly valuable, that's been accumulated through years. But there might be analysts who are bogged down by reports. There might not be too many people combing through and analyzing that data. So AI is going to be like this power drill that can go right into the iceberg, right to the center area of what you need to get to. But organizations sometimes have lots of layers. So access as much data as you can. Be curious. Get your hands on dashboards. Look at as many things as you can understand and start to ask those difficult questions. Why is this data saying this? Why is this process like that? Out of our 7 warehouses, why are these 2 ones doing so poorly? And start to look at the data because the data will tell you stories and AI will help you peel back those layers and decipher what it can mean to growth. So when I always go back to like, yeah, data is all around us, organizations have gotten lazy and they haven't been great at activating that data. So understand how you can activate it, what you can learn from it, and what it can be used for.
Summarizing what you've said, it's about identifying problems that organizations have, but maybe even more fundamentally, if I have a particular mind about a career, I want to know that field and I want to understand what are the current bottlenecks within the field. I can go deeper and deeper in those issues. And then when I finally get a job, I can start with some form of foundation, but then I will be learning based on the organizational data. That's how I understood what you've said.
Exactly. And if you can break them down into operations, processes, and data sets, you have like 3 different areas you can focus on. Because every business has operations that are used with the underlying data. And throughout, there's all these processing of information and decisions.
Are you optimistic about AI and a human collaboration?
I am. I am optimistic to a degree. I've seen some pretty weird things happen as of late with AI, like the AI psychosis. I've seen an AI dependency sometimes minimize like someone's voice. Like you might have an influencer or someone you really look up to, and AI might start to minimize their story or the uniqueness of their story, right? It becomes more generic. That's where I fear for it. I think people will lean on it too much to think for them. And I think that that will ultimately have their critical level of thought go down or reduce over time. I am optimistic because I think one of the things I've learned with working with the older workforce, so like baby boomers, is they're one of the most fearful of AI. But once they learn it, they're like super duper AI champions, right? So they're like, oh, wow, I can like spend less time doing this every week. Wow. Like I'll do whatever I can to do that. So I think that I've become optimistic I assumed that the older generations would be a little bit more resistant, but I'm actually finding that they're really big AI champions once they have that epiphany moment. So hope, I think hope and optimism is big for AI. It's kind of like oil, like it's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. So I think you just need to embrace it. So I'm definitely optimistic. I don't know. What about you with students? I think it's an area I've never seen, or don't have much experience with students on and their level of
I
optimism.
guess majority of students who I know are optimistic about AI, but complexities of lives that our students have are becoming more and more prominent. And perhaps in education, we have not yet actually caught up with those complexities. What I mean by that is we think about students, or the traditional way of thinking about a student is someone who is in full-time education, or for whom being in the university is the main thing that they do. But majority of my students are working. I have students who are carers. I have students who are parents. Majority of undergraduate students with whom I teach are very young, Gen Z, but we have students who are older, mature students. My main argument is we need to show them what kind of things they can do to build a foundation, as you were saying, what AI can do and what AI cannot do. One of the examples from my own practice, when I just started trying with ChatGPT, it happened a couple of years ago. In international business, we have a theory which is called internalization theory, developed by Professor Buckley and Casson. That theory explains why there is a multinational enterprise as a firm. And I asked ChatGPT to explain that theory to me, and it came back with internationalization explanation. But internationalization is, for example, that's what we're doing now. Both of us are in different countries, and we're having a conversation that is an international work. Well, it's something that is done on the international scale, but it's not about being a multinational enterprise. And only I think on my number 4 attempt within the same chat, it did come up with the proper explanation. Any information, any output that I'm going to use professionally should be verifiable because that's my name next to it. And I guess that's what students may not always realize. They trust it implicitly. And obviously, references should be done by students. They should put that information there, not because they reference something, but because they've written it. They've written the paragraph. They know how to put their thoughts on paper. They know how to articulate. And that skill, it's a very powerful skill. And I know that you talked a lot about human first approach, where we enhance our skills with AI. We do not try to move away from what makes us human. So I'm fully on board with that idea.
Yeah, no, and I think it's also like as you're saying that, speaking, I think it's so incredibly important for students to maintain that idea of a human first approach with AI. And I think that, that's an opportunity where, like professors like yourself could really start to pass that on. Because I think that your approach is best suited to help people grow and augment with AI, where, the tactic of fear or the tactic of completely hands off is not something that I would advise. Right. And it's to your point, like going back to that lumberjack statement, I swear this lumberjack analogy I always refer to. But if you were going to school to learn about chopping down trees, you're going to learn the tactics and techniques of doing so, and you're going to learn the best practices and the skills needed to do so. But when you get out to the real world, there will be chainsaws. So you want to also learn how to use the newest and greatest tools because that's the expectation in the workforce. So I think that that's to your point is that level of optimism, but that pragmatic approach where you don't always trust it is really what's needed.
I'm optimistic about the future. I believe that there are many opportunities, but we also need to do some groundwork, fundamental work, to know where we stand, to know who we are and what kind of things we want to do. And AI is there to be a collaborator, an assistant, a supporting element. But I don't know what the future holds. It's kind of an open question.
It's a part of the exciting part about AI, I guess.
Thank you very much, Mark, for spending time with me and my viewers. It was incredibly useful and educational to listen to what you've said. I'm definitely going to be using those examples that you've provided and your explanations in my teaching, and I'm going to go away and ponder over some of the ideas that you've put forward today. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for having me, Irina. It was such a great discussion.
Thank you. Bye.